I am very delighted and honored and candidly quite humbled to be here in front of this group. I was asked by Father John to offer some perspectives, food for thought to this group, and I said to Father, I'm not sure what level of wisdom you expect me to impart on this group, particularly given who they are and what they've done, and candidly, my relative experience versus this group's, which is quite formidable. Father John being the quiet, shy gentleman that he is, yes, was quite persuasive. And what I thought I might do today is share some perspectives. You shouldn't view these or see these as insights from Greg Case, because candidly I'm not qualified to give them. What I am qualified to do is offer some observations, and observations over the better part of probably 25 years in professional services. And the insight stems, what I believe, is from very direct observations about what it means for a firm to be successful. What's required for a firm to be successful in a sustained, long-term way. We've all seen many great firms in action. We've seen them come, we've seen them go. By the way, I looked at the list of all of you and where you're from, and there are some incredible firms represented in the audience today. But when you think about what's really required at the core of taking a firm and seeing it not only build to a great place of distinction and impact, but to sustain that. What's there? What's unique? Candidly, I have tried to become as much of a student on that as I can. And since I joined Aon in 2005, that's what we're trying to do at Aon. I'm privileged to join a firm with 43,000 colleagues who are fantastic, but we're hungry and we need to get better, and we're hungry to get better. And part of it is how do you do that? What do you focus on? All the different things around, my God, we'll focus on our clients, and we'll focus on this, we'll focus on technology. All those things are critically important. But I kept coming back to, and our team kept coming back to, because our team's really the one who's driven this, is a set of core values that when you think about almost any professional services firm around the world that's been successful in a sustained way. And I picked professional services because candidly, Aon is 43,000 people who get up every day and figure out how we want to serve clients. That's it. That's all we are. 43,000 people, we get up and decide what we're going to do. If you think about other professional services firms and who's been successful, I'm going to suggest they have a bedrock. It's not going to be exactly the one I described to you, but you'll find similarities. And the bedrock is all around values, which underpin almost everything they do around their leadership model and how people interact in their firm. I want to talk a little bit about what that could look like. I'll share with you exactly what we're thinking about with regard to Aon, but frankly, Aon's not important here. What's important is drawing from lessons around the world and asking a question, which is, does this have relevance for you in your day-to-day business lives? Is there insight that you might be able to put to work in the way that we're trying to put to work at Aon? Father John said quotes are good too. I said, what kinds of things should I be doing? What would be helpful? And he said, well, examples are good and you can talk about different things. He said, mistakes are good. I said, well, I got a lot of those. That'll be easy. Got a whole list of those in a little bit. He said, quotes are good too. So I actually am going to start with a quote from Aristotle, which I think hits this right on the head, which is, we don't act right because we have virtue or excellence. We don't act right because we have virtue or excellence. Rather, we have those because we act right. It really is about the actions we're taking. It's about what we're doing day to day, collectively, and how do you, in a broad firm, thousands of people, hundreds of countries, by the way, that's just not Aon, that's lots of firms, how do you get a collective set of colleagues to, quote, act in the right way, and act in the right way consistently over time? How do you do that? By the way, if your firm's pretty good at it, how do you get better at it? That is really, if you want to step back, and this is, you're never going to find this published in anything because we're not going to talk about it, but if you ever want to know what we believe the long-term predictor of success is at our little firm, it's going to be how well we get this journey completed. And our journey's in process. We're by no means complete. It literally is how we pull together a people leadership view and a people leadership model that creates the set of behaviors that over time tie back to our core values and our integrity. And how do you do that? So I'm going to provide five lessons. It's not quite a Letterman's Top 10 list, maybe a half of a Letterman's Top 10 list since I'm here in New York. 5 lessons, 5 requirements. I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit. I'm going to make declarations. Don't confuse these with facts. These are just my perceptions, my observations. If they're helpful, terrific, but I want to basically say if you ask The leadership of Aon, by the way, as I reflect on the leadership of McKinsey, having spent 18 years there, I think these 5 lessons are actually quite indicative of what is required for success. The preface to the 5 lessons is an underlying principle. And the principle is, if you think about values-grounded behavior, taking steps every day that are in the best interest of your clients and that are in the best interest of your colleagues who are going to help clients. If you think about those steps, does your institution, do your collective colleagues, collectively and individually, believe that's important to the success of the institution? Yes or no? It sounds like a very simple principle, but literally we live this world every day. We live the world of the deal that Dan described before. We live every little turn in our daily life, and you ask questions every day about what actions you're going to take. And is your firm collectively positioned to take a set of actions that when you look back on them are in fact done in a values-based way, in a way that in the fullness of time you would say that really was in the best interest of our client and that really was in the best interest of our colleagues. Notice I didn't say shareholder. I said clients and colleagues. Underpinning this, if you do the right things on behalf of clients and you do the right things on behalf of colleagues, by the way, the shareholders will be fine. By the way, that underpins this is what this principle is all about. Do you believe that these sets of behaviors tie to economics? Do they tie to success? You don't do them just because they're the right thing to do. You do them because, by the way, it turns out there's an incredibly high correlation between these sets of actions and success. This is back to, are you doing the right thing? Does it result in virtue? Does it result in excellence? I would tell you, when we ask the question, if you really are in the kind of quietness of a room, you get about half and half. Everybody says, my God, do you want to act in a values-based way? Of course. No, seriously, do you really think it's important? And candidly, that dialogue requires a tremendous amount, at least in our firm, a tremendous amount of conversation around, does it really matter? I mean, seriously, does it really matter? If we actually turn away 3 clients for all the right reasons, does that really help us in the long term? Candidly, it's never helped me before. All it's done is really hurt me. So if you really get into a conversation with your leadership teams around, does this kind of behavior collectively matter and individually matter? And I will tell you, as we think about the premise, one of the difficulties, at least the challenges we encounter, is collectively you can get everybody to say, yeah, it's the right thing to do. But they still don't believe in their heart individually. I got you, Greg, but when I go out on my little client thing, I've been working on this client for 8 months. I really have to get this client. I'm doing it myself. If I don't get this client, I don't know what's going to happen to me. The answer is they make a wrong decision. The collective will is actually quite powerful. One of the things we've talked about on this underlying premise is, ironically, one of the little pieces of success at Aon is, so Aon, by the way, is a firm you don't need to know a lot about, but it happens to touch probably more companies in the world on the topic of risk management of any company on the planet. Just by virtue of what Aon did. By the way, I didn't build it. Pat Ryan built it. I have the privilege to inherit it. But it touches more firms than any firm in the world on the topic of risk every day. And yet Aon was incredibly risk averse individually. Decisions we made on behalf of clients weren't always bold. They weren't always innovative. They were basically, they essentially tied to what we were asking collectively people to do, and they were taking actions that didn't really take a step forward. By the way, that's collective, requires collective risk. I realized, by the way, in thinking about it, when I asked them to do something, oh, come on, you got to get that. I wasn't putting them in a position to take individual risk. And so again, back to, as leaders, one of the big mistakes, one of the things I look at is, am I putting people in a position where it's easy for me to say, do the right thing, Jim. Right values, you know what they are. It's much different than to be able to say collectively, we're going to bet on each other. We're going to win together. And by the way, if it makes sense to say no to 4 clients and you do all the right things for the next 3 years and we don't do that, that's fine. By the way, collectively, we're going to make that decision. It's a very different psychology. It sounds subtle. It's not subtle. And by the way, when I had the conversation with our top 50 people, it was supposed to be a 5-minute dialogue. It took about 6 hours. We realized we were not aligned. And by the way, there wasn't confidence that if we did what I was describing, that either A, we would be collectively better off, because we didn't always operate that way, and B, that they would, for God's sake, they wouldn't be individually better off. Some of them would, but some of them wouldn't. That premise is the bedrock. It starts with a question which is, this is value-based behavior really matter? And the beauty of this, for whatever it's worth, is you can go out and look at firms over time. The most innovative, the most successful long-term firms start with a core set of values and deliver the core set of values. Now I want to talk about the 5 ways they do it, because to me, if you accomplish that, which by the way, again, I would say we're very much in process, we haven't solved, but if you can accomplish that, let's assume all of your colleagues agree. I got you, Greg, I believe it. I believe the Lumen values. I believe what you're describing. How do you do it? And this is a place where, again, 5 lessons that for us, when we look back on, some seem obvious, but together they're compelling, and candidly, we weren't doing them. The first is definition. So everyone in the room would probably say, Greg, I got you, that was easy, we probably solved that in our firms. Let's assume you did. Question I would ask you is, do you have definition? So lesson number 1 around values and around a bedrock that starts to form the ways your firm's going to interact, the people are going to interact, starts with definition. Do you have a definition of behavior? Yes or no? By the way, the great firms do. I know there are people in the audience today who have definitions of behavior. And it sounds easy, but you really need definitions of behavior. And not definitions of behavior around you need to act in a values-based way, but literally, and I actually went to 5 or 6 or 7 firms who I consider world-class, and we developed our own 2-page set of behaviors. It's a definition. By the way, the definition starts with, what does it mean to be a successful person at Aon? A successful colleague at Aon. Franchise superstar, gazillion dollars. Great geographic owner, dominant, connected politically. What is it? What's the gig? What makes you successful at Aon? It turns out a common definition is fundamental. If you don't have a common definition that your colleagues can write down and that they understand and it's embedded in their gut and in their heart, you can't start this process. It's actually quite amazing. You literally can't start the process. And for me, I watched it at a firm that did it for 75 years, my previous firm, and I watched it at an awesome firm. Aon's an awesome firm, but it had been built up on 400 acquisitions. So it turned out it wasn't a common definition. A year later, we had a definition, by the way, not rocket science. Guess what? To be successful at Aon, you have to serve clients distinctively. You have to collaborate and work in teams. You have to be innovative. You have to meet your commitments, be fiscally responsible, and you have to live our integrity and our values. By the way, we have good, we have bad, good, and great in all of those. Very simple, embedded. We have definition. So all of a sudden, across 43,000 colleagues, we have definition on what it means to be a great colleague at Aon. By the way, it turned out that was controversial. It was hard. We have a very common bedrock of what it means to be great. So I would ask you, your own firms, do you literally have a common definition that people don't need to pull out a piece of paper to recite? It's interesting. Yes or no? I'm going to argue if you don't have that, it's really hard to sustain a values-based approach in which people exhibit behavior you want them to exhibit. So lesson number 1 for me was definition. Definition, do you have it, yes or no? Lesson number 2 is once we had it, was calibration. Do people actually understand it in terms of what it means for them? So we have, as you might have across all firms, great people in every single continent of the world. But it turns out a great person in Shanghai was not the same as a great person in New York. I'm not going to say which one was better, but calibration was critical. By the way, calibration comes from discussion. It comes from reflection. It comes from literally watching situations and getting it right. If you don't have calibration, you're lost. You have this artificial definition, but you don't really have a way to talk about people. You can't develop people. The heart of this around how you build a firm, a professional services firm, at least as I've watched it, is, again, not my keen insight, but having watched it, it's all about how you connect people in a way that they exhibit the right behavior. If you don't have definition and you don't have calibration, you're lost. But you guys probably have that. Lockdown, definition, you've got it, pulled out, all of your colleagues around the world consider it. I know what it means to be successful at our firm. By the way, we're locked on calibrated. If we score somebody great here, they're going to score great here. Locked on calibrated. Lesson 3, requirement 3, trust. Turns out, biggest breakdown we have every day is trust. Are you seriously telling me if I walk away from this client for the reasons that you're telling me to walk away that I'm not going to get hurt individually? Are you seriously telling me that? Is that right? Are you seriously telling me that if we behave this way across our firm, we're going to be 20% better? That was a big leap of faith. Are you seriously telling me that? Yeah, we are. Why? It's analytic. It should be spiritual maybe. It's also analytic. Literally, let's go through what other firms do, how firms compete, what clients want to have, what do they want to look at. And you literally say, you've got to trust that we're going to play together collectively. And the values-based approach I'm describing is literally all around how you connect thousands of people in a way that you can get them to take the right acts, the right actions. If you don't have a way to connect them, you won't do it. You'll brute force for a while, then you'll fall back. We've got thousands of examples of firms that do that. Firms that are sustainable literally have a common definition, they have common calibration, and they have trust. In the end, you've absolutely got to build the pie in terms of sort of what you're growing. It's just part of the business. You've got to build, you've got to be more successful, and you've got to have trust that what you're doing will do that when you're asking people to act differently, because that's what we're doing. We're asking them to act differently, and you've got to believe in the end that you're going to allocate it and give it out in a way that's fair. Trust, it's critical. By the way, secret sauce of McKinsey, my previous firm, nobody liked the evaluation process, guarantee you. Trusted it. Trusted it. Careers were made and broke. Done. But people trusted it. Do you have that? We're working hard on that at Aon. We don't have that quite yet. We're working hard on it. By the way, the power that's unleashed when you do that, it's incredible. You can take a firm that's regional and make it global overnight. The power that's unleashed is incredible. So first is definition, second is calibration, third is trust. You must have trust. The fourth is action. This is a really hard one, at least it's been hard for me. We have some unbelievable colleagues at Aon, most incredible, more accomplished than I will ever be, incredibly accomplished. They don't always act in the bounds that they should act in. You guys probably don't have anybody like that. We do. What are you doing about it? How do you help them? How do you help them succeed? How do you mold it? How do you support them? How do you put them in positions where they can get better and better and better? And then when they don't do that, what action do you take? This is a real hard one for me. I'm a new CEO by the scale of this room. Certainly new compared to our founder. And to pull the trigger on folks who produce real revenue and real income, because you have to believe that what you're doing collectively is going to be more powerful, it's not easy. And I'm not suggesting I'm any great shakes at it, but I'm going to tell you, having observed this, if you don't do it, the 43,000 know it. You've got to live the values. You've got to take action. By the way, what you're doing here also has to influence your business. What do you take? Where are you betting? What are you trying to think about? Where are you playing? Why are you doing it? I joked with Father John. He's in Jerusalem, I think, for 10 days. I was in Jerusalem too, as I told him, for 4 hours. I got a tour of the city, though. It was good. I think I committed a sacrilege for running through. They told me I was supposed to walk and not run. But we made a big investment in Israel. We think it's the right thing to do. We think it's going to be incredibly powerful economically, but it was the right thing to do for a variety of reasons. Your business objectives have got to be reflected in what you're trying to do. So you've got to have definition, you've got to have calibration, you've got to have trust, you've got to take action. And then the final one that I've observed that I would offer is you've got to have patience. I will tell you right now, flat out, what limited success that Aon has had is a direct reflection of Pat Ryan and the people before me. My colleagues have been awesome, and we made some good improvements and good things, but they've done it. But the thing that will affect our future more than anything else, the things Jim described, it's not about the client leadership piece we're taking, it's not about anything else. At the end of the day, it's going to be this. Literally, the fundamental determinant of whether we are successful or not long-term, successful meaning doubling the imprint of our firm, tripling the imprint of our firm globally, is going to be this. By the way, Father John got me to talk about this. I will never talk about this roughly in public, in this broad-based. Most people won't quite click with it. But in the end, the thing that will drive our success, period, is whether we can pull this off. Whether we can take this set of definitions around the 5 things I described to you, whether we can embed them across Aon, 43,000 colleagues, whether we can get them to understand in a common way what it means to achieve, whether we can get them to trust that if we take action, different than what they're taking, because if we just keep taking the same action we're taking as before, we're not going to succeed. They have to trust that's going to pay off for the firm and for them individually. Big step for us. If we take action against that, the last one is patience. I would tell you our team doesn't have a lot of patience for lots of different things. On this one, we see, this is the first step of this journey is a 5-year step. The firms that have gotten this right have been proven out over 50, 60, 70 years. We haven't been. We're a wonderful set of assets that have come together through acquisitions, and for us, it's going to be literally watching this evolve over time. Praying that we actually get this right, we get the right pace, because by the way, if you jam this too hard, it will be rejected by the system, at least in our estimate. But this is the thing we're most anxious about, which is literally how do you build a firm in a very values-oriented way, recognizing that, by the way, it's the right thing to do, and oh yeah, it just turns out the economics are unbelievably powerful. The sustainability, incredibly strong. That's what we're trying to work on. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And we believe if we can do that, and we can get our colleagues to both understand the importance of that and self-discover that it's the right thing to do in the right way, we will be incredibly successful. We're also convinced that if we don't accomplish it, if we don't get conviction around it, that we will be fine, whether we will declare victory. We'll go to our investment leaders and say, we did fine, don't sell us, we're okay, but we will have lost a massive opportunity. We will have lost an incredible opportunity to build a great firm. And a firm that, even if it's great in a short period of time, we have lost an opportunity to build a great firm for a sustainable period of time. Well beyond my tenure and the tenure after me. That's, for us, that's what's at risk. That's why this is real and quite personal. So those 5 lessons are what I wanted to offer, which is literally around, first of all, do you have the principle in place that, in which your colleagues would say, actually the trade-off is real and meaningful, and they would do it, yes or no? By the way, most would say yes and not do it. And then do those 5 things exist in your firm? Do you have definition, true definition of what success is? Do you have true calibration so people understand it and you've talked about it and you live it? Do you have trust? Do you have action?